Hi, and welcome to the Kale Houser Leadership Secrets podcast. Today we're going to talk about being efficient versus being thorough. Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Kale Houser Leadership Secrets podcast. My name is Kale Houser. Thank you so much for joining me today. I very much appreciate it. I hope you're having a fantastic day, week, morning, afternoon, night, no matter where you're at. I hope things are clicking for you, that you're gaining value from this podcast, that you're implementing the concepts and tactical things that I'm trying to convey to you to really help you as a leader build that confidence to be able to connect with your teams and ultimately create that inspirational environment, this motivation type thing of having these teams that want to be there, right? Not just coming in because, I need to pay my rent, right? And they need to earn a paycheck. But our ultimate goal is to create an environment and a culture in your workplace and your space and your industry that people want to be there. They want to be a part of because it is so massive and growing and you've got such a movement. So that is our goal, if you didn't know that already. I want to talk a little bit today about, and kind of as an introduction, about efficiency versus being thorough. And in my mind, I think of these two things as not necessarily mutually exclusive, but also not necessarily mutually supportive of each other. I've always thought of efficiency as being, you kind of relate, it implies a speed to something. It implies, an impartiality and experience, right? You're very efficient at that because you've done it so many times. You have experience. The doubt that you may have about doing that task or that thing has gone away because you've seen it so many times. You've experienced so many different scenarios and handled it, right? So you've become more efficient. You've kind of trimmed the excess fat, if you will, of that task, right? And it could be anything. If you're cooking a meal, you've figured out where to fit in measuring the different ingredients that you need and when to pull it out of the kitchen and when to turn the heat down on your boiler and all those types of things. When to check the meat temperature and when to, mix your sauce, all those types of things. You've learned that process because you've done it so many times. This could be like your big American Thanksgiving or Christmas dinner, right? It's a big ordeal. You're cooking for 30 people that decided to show up to your house. But because you do it every year or even twice a year or even 3 times a year, depending on your holidays, you've become efficient at it. So where it used to take you 15 hours to do a complete dinner, now you're down to 7 or something like that. And most of that is just the cook time for the turkey because you've gotten that process. And I know for a lot of guys that do they smoke meat in their smoker, there's a learning curve to that, right? When you start out at it, you're very slow and methodical. You're very thorough because you don't want to miss everything. You don't want to ruin this $70 side of brisket that you're trying to grill up or smoke. So you're very thorough and slow and methodical about that because you want to make sure everything is done correctly and right. But as you've done it several times, you get to the point where you're like, you just know. You have that expectation of input that you do creates an output on the other end, right? You have these standards set up and these lessons that you've learned along the process of doing it. So it implies that experience and impartiality and that speed. And on the other hand, thoroughness implies speed on the opposite end. It implies kind of slow, more methodical, right? You potentially inexperienced. And that doesn't necessarily mean that somebody that is thorough is inexperienced, not at all. But generally, an inexperienced person tries to take things slower and to be more thorough to ensure they don't miss anything, if their ideal is to do a good job at learning it. But this can be frustrating as a business owner. As a business owner, we want efficient people. We want people to, you want to get the most bang for your buck if that's what you're paying them a salary to do. You want them to produce, 10 widgets an hour instead of 7 widgets an hour. That's just kind of a natural aspect of being a business owner because it is all about, productivity and things of that nature and getting, the proper ROI on your investment of people and salary and those types of things. But you cannot ignore the thoroughness aspect of it because there is a point where efficiency will sacrifice quality. Efficiency will sacrifice that connection aspect because to be efficient, to produce those 10 widgets an hour, maybe that means that they're not getting an actual break to where they can, a 10-minute, 15-minute, whatever break that you've got going on, to be able to go out and decompress, to give their hands a rest, to kind of relax a second. Maybe that means that now they're getting a 5-minute break. And then ultimately, while that may be sustainable for a little while, it's not sustainable long-term by any stretch, because people need to, especially if it's something that requires some mental prowess, you need to be able to give your brain that break to step away from that. So there's a balance, right? And this happens a lot too in how people relate to each other. There are some people that are very thorough, they're very methodical, they're very intentional of how they talk to each other. And generally, and I'm even doing it now, generally that comes along with a slower pace of a talk, a little bit different tonality as far as how they use their voice to relate to you, versus somebody that's a little more efficient, typically talks faster, a little bit higher tone. They're moving a little bit faster and moving a little bit more sure, and then they're driving to a point versus kind of taking this meandering road to get to whatever topic that you're talking about. Or maybe there isn't even any point to the conversation, it's just they're talking. And this is something that I have found as I've started to recognize in myself, and you've probably seen it. I'm a little bit more on the fast-talking end of the spectrum versus somebody that, can sit back and we just have this, kind of country fried steak kind of conversation where we just have nothing going on. And, whether we spend an hour here talking about this topic or we spend the next 12 minutes talking about this topic doesn't really matter to me, because, I'm just very thorough. I just want to make sure that you, listener, get all the points I'm trying to make, right? And you can see the difference in that. The one drives me absolutely insane. I can't do it. That was even painful for me to do that little example, because it is, in my mind, it's so slow and inefficient of how to communicate. But like we said in last episode, it's not what you think they heard, it's what they think they heard from you. And how and the type of way you communicate with them in this form, whether it's what I would consider an efficient, to the point, direct type of communication versus a more not necessarily inefficient, but a more thorough, slower paced, methodical form of communication will impact what they think that they heard from you, right? Does that make sense? And one of the things as I become aware of this, is I put this filter on people that I'm listening to, whether it be at a conference or a seminar or on another podcast or an audiobook, whatever it is. I've had to turn off audiobooks before because the person doing and performing the audiobook, they're just the wrong type for me to listen to. And I may be that for you. I may have lost people along the way because I talk too fast, or I don't have very all the time clear, concise thoughts, right? And that's just kind of how we relate to each other as human beings. Is a major factor that's taken into account. But yeah, in audiobooks, I've had listening through a series of multi-part books and things, and like they've had a really good speakers, or I guess it's a performer for that, an actor for those audiobooks, reading the book, and then you get to like book 3 and they switched out the person and it's completely different, right? And I'm like, oh, this sucks. Like this, the first guy, he was like right in line with me, was a little bit faster talker, or not faster because you never want that in an audiobook, but just the way he talked in tonality, and you got that feel, versus this other person they brought on was the complete opposite end of the spectrum. And I've found this. There's one speaker that we run into a lot in our world, and I'm not going to name his name at all, but he is much slower. He's more methodical. He's more, I guess you could call it like thoughtful in how he communicates. And even if he's up on a stage communicating to the masses, or online, whatever it is, some sort of course where he's communicating to masses, he is not a fast talker. But there's a balance. He's moved more towards the spectrum of tilting to the like, all right, man, get to the point. Like, I get it. The dramatic pauses, like, use them to an effect, but stop using them after every sentence, right? And that's just kind of the way he talks. And I've been around and witnessed these talks enough to know that it wasn't a one-off. It wasn't a two-off. That's just the way he is. And because of that, it makes it difficult for me to get past that and get as much out of that conversation or that talk as possible of what he's trying to communicate, because now all I'm hearing is my analysis of how he's talking versus what he's talking about, right? Does that make sense? Versus I personally relate to somebody that's a little bit more fast talker. They're a little bit more, high tone, and they go straight after the point and that type of thing, without so much of the dramatic pauses and pauses for effect. But that isn't necessarily you, and that's not everybody. But it is something you need to be aware of, especially you as the leader, of how you are communicating to your people and knowing how they're hearing you, right? Is the way you talk to them, and I'm not talking about attitude or things of that nature. I'm purely talking about modality, tonality, pace, all those types of things of how you communicate. And this is something, if you are learning and growing as a leader, you need to become aware of. Even if it's to the point where you may need to take a class, you may need to take some sort of instructional program to help you do that, whether it's a speaking program or a speech class, And I would argue against like your community college level like speech class, because that's teaching more mechanics and not necessarily applicable to, most scenarios. But if you're in an industry where there are conferences, and maybe you hope to be a presenter someday at these conferences or seminars, or do your own, this is something that is well worth your investment to find a good mentor and a good program teacher that can take you through this. That is a whole package of not only the technical aspect of it, but also the social aspect of how you present and things of that nature. And that may be something you need to, work into your budget if that is a goal of yours. But if not, if you're more, you have no aspirations or no opportunity to get on these stages, Toastmasters, that's what I wanted to say. Toastmasters is a great local community type organization that is known for this. They do very well at that. I have personally never been a part of Toastmasters, but I've got friends that are. It was just never for me, that type of community. And they all have nothing but fantastic things to say about us. So look up your local Toastmasters organization and get plugged in with them. That is a great first step of, people that you can get connected to if this is a goal of yours, if you wanted to get better at speaking in general and using that form of communication for mass communication. And it will do nothing but help you as you're running your teams, as you're building and growing your business, because it is very similar to if you've got a big sales call with a company that you're hoping to land this client. There are a lot of same things of how you do your presentation to them and pitch your offer to them is very similar to, as somebody would do a TED Talk or something of that nature. Or shoot, if you're that type of person too, you can just watch 100 different TED Talks and analyze how the speakers are going through. Is the speaker connecting more that's maybe talking a little bit faster, or is it one a little bit slower? Ones that use the pace to the maximum effect to make points during their speech. Those are all things. But, for that, you have to be pretty self-aware and know exactly what you're going for and what the type of thing you want to learn from that. That's just self-teaching in general. So this little bit of efficiency versus thoroughness, I know we've talked on a couple different aspects of that, but it all comes down to really, there's a famous, and I want to say it came from the Marine Corps. Don't kill me if it was the Army or somewhere else, but there's a famous military saying, and most of the services have adopted it, is smooth is fast. Slow is smooth and smooth is fast. Sorry, I jumped the gun there on that. So let me say it again. Slow is smooth and smooth is fast. And the point of it is, and I think this comes from the aspect of really reloading your weapon, right? If you're in the middle of a firefight and you're just trying to jam that magazine back in there and you miss the mag well, or you've got it turned upside down or whatever that is, you're not fast anymore, right? Even in a time critical situation where you're getting shot at or somebody's about to, launch an RPG at you, you need to reload because you just clicked empty. There's a concept of slow is smooth in the sense of if you take that extra second, to look down at your mag well or feel it with your fingertip to make sure that everything is going in as it's supposed to and you ready your weapon for that response, then that itself is fast. Does that make sense? So slow is smooth, smooth is fast. So it's this kind of dichotomy of terms, but the reality is it kind of goes back to that doing it right the first time in the military sense, right? So take that extra couple seconds. How that applies to you and your business, again, it all depends. What type of things are you doing that have opportunity for efficiency, but maybe too much on the end of efficiency where you're sacrificing that smoothness or that ultimate speed, right? You're going for the short-term gain versus the overall objective of meeting your targets. All right. So that's about all I wanted to say right now about efficiency versus thoroughness. There's certainly more to discuss about it. If there's a certain aspect of this that you've encountered that you want to discuss, please let me know. Drop a comment below. Certainly likes and subscribes. Please subscribe because it helps the channel out tremendously to spread the word and get the name out there. Be sure to visit kalehouser.com. And if you're in the local area, kalehouserleadership.com/master to check out our masterclass we've got coming up about hiring, attract, hire, and retain great people in your business. All right, everybody, I hope you have a fantastic day. Enjoy the rest of your afternoon, evening, morning, whatever it is for you. We'll talk to you soon. Bye.